Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go.
Hey, everybody. This is the final episode posting in 2024 for Eating at a Meeting. I'm so excited. There have been so many guests this year, 99 exactly, including this one. And I'm so excited to bring this conversation to you. It is actually a panel discussion, a recording of a panel discussion that I did back in October during IMEX. It was an offsite event called Beyond the Bar, 100% focused on the benefits and opportunities in bringing non-alcoholic adult beverages to our event bars. The panelists included David T. Stevens, my friend, who moderated it, myself, Alyssa Hayes, Madeline Olivaria, and Carl Radke. And we provide 4 different perspectives of people who don't drink at all. And then David, who does drink, but moderates it with some non-alcoholic beverages in the middle. It was just a conversation from all of us on how we can use non-alcoholic adult beverages to create a more inclusive experience in our events from the bar perspective. We often think about the food that we're serving and how we create, provide for gluten-free and dairy-free, et cetera. This is a conversation specifically about non-alcoholic bar options. I hope you learned something from it. It is posting the day before January 1st, which kicks off Dry January. So let me know what you think. Let me know in comments if you are already incorporating non-alcoholic adult beverages into your event menus and how those are going. Has it helped you meet your food and beverage minimums? Has it helped people feel more included and stay at your events longer? Let me know. We really want to understand how this is helping event planners with their events. And we also want to help you create better experiences.
Are you sufficiently ready to make noise for the panelists now?
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. First, you may know him from Bravo TV's Summer House. You also might know him from these beverages called Loverboy. Ears are quiet. Wow. Okay. All right. Regardless, his name is Carl Radke, and he is here tonight to join us to talk about the power of inclusion when it comes to beverages at events.
Oh, come on out. How's it going, everybody? Thanks for coming. Pleased to hear. How we doing? Is everybody feel good? Do we have any Bravo fans here? Nice to see you all. Thank you. Appreciate you. Sorry, I won't talk too much. I'll let everybody.
No, it's okay. It's all right.
They're just excited to be here. Thank you, honestly.
Okay. He's excited also so that you all will want to try his drinks and bring him into events, right? He was in sales, so it's all good.
I won't try to be too salesy tonight.
Yes. I'll
try. Tell me to shut up.
I'll plug it over and over and over again. Okay. All right. Up next, we have another individual who is in sales and also leads in her spare time women at AWS. Madeline, come on out.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all. You work for AWS. Isn't that like Seattle? And you're from San Diego.
Atlanta, lived in Austin, lived in Seattle, now
Well, you know what the good thing about...
girl.
You know what the good thing about y'all is?
It's inclusive.
Y'all beats all.
It's good. Just a couple of hands up.
Yep, exactly. Okay. All right. Next up on our panel, we have the one and only with other agency who started her own sober community during the pandemic because we all know that time was fucked up, let's be honest, all right? And 7 years sober, Alyssa Behart. Come on out, Alyssa. Okay, amazing. Let's bring our last panelist up so that we can start this conversation. You may know her from her podcast, Eating at a Meeting. Oh, shit, you all know her from Eating at a Meeting. Tracy Stuckrath. Whoa. All right, so we're going to get into this. And listen, we're going to send this question to you first. We're planning this event that's been, 6 months in the making. We really wanted to make sure that this meant something to everybody in the audience and that it was, that you left with a little different than when you came in the doors. So we're going to start with why this conversation matters to you. It's okay, I'll get it. Or let's talk about why this conversation matters to you. Alyssa, we're going to go with you first. And why you think it's important to have this conversation. And feel free to share if you've been to an event where they only offer you water or soda.
Yeah, well, I think for starters, there's sobriety. Sober inclusion at events is just like one little baby piece of it, right? And I feel like a big question I have is like, why now? Have you spent my whole pandemic like talking about sobriety every day, meet sober people every day, and then switching back into in-person with other when I joined that team? I can't imagine this conversation happening at IMEX with a full room even 2 years ago. But I feel like people are kind of collectively sobering up, and I think people want to be in more authentic spaces. I think people want a permission structure to show up as their full self and feel valued in spaces they show up. So I think that's why it's important to me, on a macro scale. And, personally, like having made this decision for my own life for 7 years, I'm choosing to show up literally as myself to everything, like for better, for worse, instead of being like, I'm checking out and escaping. You learn from those things, but it also makes you very aware. And if if our job is a group experience, then I need to be aware of what that means to everyone else that's showing up in the room. So that's why it's important to me. I'm trying to think of, we've actually talked about this. So an occasion for me, even going to like large industry conferences this year, for some of the biggest companies, I'm solely offered like a soda. And I think even, I'm like, really, like people need to be leading on this whenever they have the opportunity. So
one of the ones I went to was a big company, and all they had was soda and water. So I think that's a perfect segue for you, Madeline. We're talking big companies, and you're part of AWS. So let's talk about why this conversation matters to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I joined AWS 10 years ago, and I've actually been at Amazon longer than 99% of our current employees. We have 1.5 million employees globally, about 130,000 of those work for AWS and corporate. And this is important to me because I'm in sales, and I've been going to these huge industry technology events for over a decade now. I've been to over 50 of them. I go to SAP events, all of our AWS and Amazon events. And in my 20s, I was usually drinking. You get the free wine at 5 p.m., you go to the dinner, order more wine, you go to the club, get the vodka soda, like the whole thing. And I would just feel like shit usually, honestly, and not be very effective.
It's a comedy club. Cursing is encouraged.
Yeah, it's after hours, right? But I went to a lot of events that way. And then, like we mentioned, the pandemic in 2020, I changed a lot of my habits. I got my yoga teacher certification, started teaching yoga, changed my diet, nutrition. With that, cut alcohol out of my life. I did like a 90-day thing, and I'm still going almost 3.5 years later.
Amazing. All right, Tracy, Carl, who wants to go first? Tracy?
So it's important to me. I am all about sustainability, safety, and inclusion. But I stopped drinking 4.5 years ago, and I use that as a number, but I don't even really, I cut down a lot longer time frame than that. And I want to make sure, and I stopped because I didn't want to spend the money, have the drunk hungover feeling anymore, and I didn't want the calories. And I was living by myself, and I'm like, I don't want to drink on my own. But I'm just sitting here and we're thinking in Las Vegas, and it reminds me back to an event that I did in my old corporate job, and they were here for a trade show. And I remember one of my head sales guys showing up the next morning, like 2 hours late, and talking about how he took his client out until 2 o'clock in the morning, and they were dirty dancing and they were drunk off their butt. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not what you need to tell me when you show up. I'm like, I need you to be here, and I need you to be focused. And the immediate CC of HR. Right, yeah. No, I didn't do that, Anthony.
You teed that up very well. I'm glad that we all hung out backstage a little bit because, Carl, everyone was sharing when their last drink was. By the way, I am not sober. I am right now. But I believe in this because of how it impacts people, let alone there's 38% of the entire adult market in the U.S. doesn't drink. But we were hanging out backstage, and I'm the outlier in this, but they were talking about their last drink. You talked about not wanting to drink while you were alone, and Carl shared when his last drink was and what the epiphany that happened.
Yeah, I mean, my last...
If you're comfortable sharing that, I mean, you are on reality TV, so I feel like you should be.
Yeah, no, I thought pretty openly about my ups and downs in it. I describe myself as sober and in recovery. I haven't been drinking 3.75 years, so a little less than 4 years.
On the dot.
Today, 3.75, 45 months. It's been really good for me. But I kind of look at it from a different way. Like the last day of my drinking was by myself in my own apartment, doing other substances as well. So funny enough, my last drink actually was a Loverboy, but I don't miss it. I like the new taste of the 9-hour. But I think just for today, like what's important to me and why we're here, like the last almost 6 years I've been a part of an alcohol company called Loverboy, which some of you are drinking the alcohol versions and something non-alcohol. About 3.5 years into that process, I realized that I needed to get some help and not drink anymore. But what's funny is working in the industry was very, very eye-opening. I was at events left and right promoting our products, but even at bars and restaurants, I had nothing to drink. I mean, whether it's a sugary soda or just a water. So I was starting to scratch my head being at an alcohol company and not having a non-alcoholic drink. So I'd met a lot of people over the years, whether it's a bar, restaurant, managers, owners, bartenders, a lot of people that work in the alcohol industry actually don't drink either. And there's still a lot of people that do, but, and David said a point earlier just about 30% of Americans do not drink alcohol.
38.
Almost 40. Almost 40. So, and what I started looking at that number and I'm like, that's unbelievable. But what I started to realize is a lot of that 30%, they just live their life. They don't make noise. They don't complain. Because it's been the norm the last 100 years where they go to a place and they're just expecting not to add anything for it. But, I've learned just having more options for people. It's not also for people that are just sober like me. It's people that are taking a break. How many people in this room have kids or important meetings in the morning where they need to be focused or have their quote-unquote shit together? Non-alcoholic drinks are for people that still drink alcohol too. And that's the key number here is 94% of non-alcoholic purchases, like beauty products right here. 94% of these sales are actually made by people that still drink alcohol.
So my mom buys the bourbon for her and the non-alcoholic stuff for my dad.
Exactly. Now, I will just compare it too. I mean, you think about you go to a restaurant, they may ask you, does anybody have any allergies at this table? Right? That's for food. What about alcohol? Think about that. People are allergic to alcohol for different reasons. Lyme disease, postmenopausal, pregnancy, poor decisions like me. So I think it's important to recognize it's not all about the sober people. It's for your close friends and people that don't describe themselves as sober. They just want something else to drink. And I'll just add the last little note here. I was in Madison Square Garden, the world's greatest arena, a couple months ago for a concert. Yeah, shout out to the Garden. It's a Pepsi arena, so Pepsi has the contract there, which is Aquafina and obviously Pepsi products. The only thing I could have to drink at that concert was an Aquafina, which is I'm in New York City, this amazing arena at a concert, and the only thing for me and everybody else in that arena who just doesn't want to drink alcohol was probably the worst water of them all, Aquafina. Sorry, Aquafina. So there's a water guy on TikTok who actually rates waters. You should watch it. It's very eye-opening. Aquafina and Dasani.
Yeah, I hope Caesars doesn't have the exclusive with
Sorry, Caesars, you got a bit built to my room.
Yeah. So you're saying IMEX was more inclusive than Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, it's just important to have alternatives and options. Alyssa, obviously, I relate to a lot of her story, but not everybody here on this stage is necessarily considering themselves I'm in recovery, I go to AA. And that's the people we want to make sure we're including, supporting. It's not just people like us.
Yeah, so you shared some stats, and I think I'd like to dig into kind of how the market's shifting and dig into that a little more. And or if you want to talk about it as well, I'd love to experience if you've been to an event where they didn't have you just did, and you had to drink the worst water of all waters. So did you were there other events that you've been to where you're just this sucks, there's nothing for me, and did you stay or did you leave? Although this is a rapid fire question, I know it's a little off the cuff.
The most recent horrible one was Cheerwine and Fresca mixed together and called pale ale. Yeah.
Cheerwine.
He's like, oh, here, Chanera Moxio. Like, okay, great, let me have it. And I'm like, what is this? And he's like, it's cheer.
Did anybody else taste that before they offered it?
Probably not. And I'm like, here, I'll just take my water. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Have you been to an event, Alyssa, where they really didn't have anything? They're like, nah, I'll just leave.
I mean, I've been to many. I think what's coming to mind for me is all the times I've gone out. Like, I think the biggest thing, even if you're trying to take a month break, like, you still want to live your life. And I remember at some point in Austin going out, and I would always buy Topo Chicos, which everyone's probably familiar with. I call it my Topo baby because I drink so many while I was out. But at some point, like, it would be cheaper to drink a PBR than a Topo Chico at some places. And I just remember, like, being like, it's fucking water. Like, but I think what I'm thinking about too, like, even just being out in those places, whether you're just trying to test it out, like, feeling comfortable and having something in your hand is literally the biggest thing that can help ease your anxiety. And the absence of that, or it being like, you know, a Shirley Temple or whatever, I think it is just, again, it's just like a constant othering that you just get used to. So I feel like maybe I'm kind of used to it, unfortunately.
So you're just comfortable feeling dejected and like an outlier?
Yeah, I just wish somebody your ears off. Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, well, this is not going to turn into that panel addressing that. Madeline, do you have anything you want to add, or should we jump into like where you feel like the market's going? Because like we talked about, we couldn't have this conversation probably 2 years ago.
I would just add that in my experience, I've lived in 4 states and worked in a few states, and it's quite regional as well. Now that I live in Southern California and San Diego, I don't remember the last time I went to a restaurant that did have an extensive non-spirit or non-alcoholic menu, which is very enjoyable to live there.
Sounds like we got to move to San Diego.
Maybe so.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the best weather in the world, I think. So that's why it costs what it does. Something there. Okay, let's talk about where the market's going. Carl, you started 2 businesses focused on this.
Yeah, I mean, living and breathing it, obviously. You also have soft bars, so which in case you're not familiar with. Yeah, so I mean, obviously there's Loverboy, which I'm a big part of. I did actually start Loverboy. Kyle Cook, his wife Amanda, shout out to them, I love them. They started it, but I was an investor and worked with them the last 5.5, 6 years. But during kind of my sobriety journey, also realizing that there wasn't a lot of options out there, I also realized that the options that are available in non-alc, there's nowhere to drink them. You know, like these cool new NA products. So I started to realize that there's an opportunity to create what we call a third space. So it's a bar and a coffee shop, but we don't serve any alcohol. And it's called Soft Bar. It's going to be opening up in New York early next year, and hopefully more locations. Yeah, my whole thing was, you know, like I said, we're talking about creating inclusive spaces and welcoming environments. This is not a sober bar or cafe. It's just a bar and cafe. We don't have alcohol because not everybody is comfortable raising their hand or saying, hey, I'm sober. So we wanted it to be as inclusive as possible. Regardless of where you're at in your journey, you could have had a drink in the parking lot. Come on in, we just don't have alcohol. So that's, you know, kind of what I've been focused on, is trying to kind of bring more of this to people. I think a lot of us need this space and need these options just to feel like we can be more included.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Have you guys heard of like the term third spaces before? Yeah. So I was like today in my sessions. Oh, perfect. Well, you should have been a Tracy session, is what I'm hearing. There are a lot less third spaces than there were. Like, there's less and less as time goes on. Like, people used to have bowling alleys and like other spaces that weren't bar related. Events are probably the biggest third space there is now. And so I think even that's like a big thing for us to think about, like what duty of care we have for being the gatherers of people in these third spaces to make them feel included and give them a permission structure to show up a little bit differently and show up as their full selves.
Love that. Madeline, I know you talked about, you started surveying people at your Women at AWS events. What kind of results were you getting on the alcohol interest?
Yeah. So I lead our employee resource group. We have 13 of them at Amazon. Women at Amazon is one of those. And we send out 2 quarterly surveys. And now that we're starting to go back in the office more and more, and people are going in real life to these conferences again, we're asking questions like, well, what would you commute in for? What do you want to get on an airplane to go do? What is worth leading your family for? In info surveys, people have been telling us that wellness and fitness and career development events and socializing is more important to them. We hear that alcohol is not necessary at events. We've been hosting events where we do have a bartender, beer and wine. It doesn't get touched, especially by women. And same with the interns this summer. They loved coming to events with just sparkling water. So I have a lot of budget to use on other more tangible things that people have been asked longer for.
I was just going to chime in. I've heard this anecdotally from friends of mine in New York that work at financial institutions. And a lot of like the young new interns or the new hires, they do these kind of happy hours for the new employees. And they were telling me they throw to this fall already and nobody comes. And she goes, it's even more worse because we spent all this money on this alcohol that no one's actually drinking. So you're not even providing something that people are looking for, and then you're fisting money away to boot.
Yeah, that culture is changing. And the statistic is that 44% or 43%, somewhere in there, of millennials and Gen Z have never had alcohol at all. And so you're spending
Yeah, I was drinking all of that for millennials.
Right. And some reason that they were hosky, right? But like, why are you spending that? And I mean, don't do the open bar or just do the consumption bar instead, right? So you're only paying for what they actually drink. But why spend the money on it if they're doing it? And you mentioned the making sure that you have the spaces. I mean, and the HR reasons before. In my old corporate job, I got the event manager I was exhibiting at the show, and the event manager was like, walk me, Tracy. And she's like, let me tell you the story that happened last night. And this woman, she had a bunch of margaritas at our event. She fell into the Gaylord fountain at the conference, slit her head open. Such and such company pulled her out of the fountain, which happened to be our and I'm like, please don't be my employees. These will be my employees. It was my employee, and our competitor pulled her out of the fountain. And I did call HR on that one. And I'm like, and she wasn't even under my purview of being at that event, but everybody knew she worked for my company. She lost her job within 2 days.
I never want to be that person somebody's telling that story about, because people a lot like talk on stage like, oh, you were at this thing, that person got super drunk.
Yeah, we threw a party here in Vegas a couple years ago at Tao Day Club, and it was a nighttime event. We were here for a Snowflake Summit, and we threw the rager of a party. We were the first corporate event in Tao Beach Club, and this guy got arrested at the door because he showed up just wrecked and tried to like spear the bouncer to get past him. Like he tried to jump past him, and instead the bouncer stepped in and he just hit him and kind of fell on the ground, and they tackled him, put him in cuffs, and took him away. We found out he was an executive. He was a chief data officer from a large consulting company.
But what's interesting is like so many people, like I'm sure plenty of you have stories like this of things that have happened with clients or customers, and to have all this data, but this is still something that's not like been progressed a lot on, even though, a lot of venues are making sustainability efforts. They have healthy food options now. So what's interesting to me is like there's a lot of cultural trends that are transitioning into industry with a little more effort, and this one just seems like if there's some sort of stop.
You know what? I'm going to disagree with you. You know why?
Because of Caesars?
No, because we're here. We're here at this rope. We're in this space right now. We are talking about this. Like you said, 2 years ago, this wouldn't have happened. 2 years ago, there was 0 mocktails on the show floor, and here we are now. Like, yeah, it's stuffing.
It is. I mean, do it if you're a corporation, I mean, you're responsible to put your employees in that kind of environment or an unsafe environment, especially for women. I mean, let's be honest, we've all heard these stories. I mean, I'll just add, one of the last times I was in Vegas prior to BravoCon last year, as I actually was working for a sales company. I won an award. And I had gone out so crazy the night before. I wasn't even in the room when my name was announced. I told this story recently on like a sober podcast, but I mean, I'm an example of that. I mean, there were other guys that got fired at the same exact sales meeting. It's like, what are we doing? So I think it's irresponsible for companies not to consider just the impact of like not offering non-alcoholic options for your employees. You hire them to perform, right? Not to get drunk.
This is to explain the ROI to the hirers.
So I think one of the things that we touched on is the fact that as you go down the age chart or the generation chart, the difference in the percentage of people that aren't drinking and or haven't drank, because our workforce is changing, our event attendees are changing. I want us to remember that, we're reaching out to people and trying to bring them to our events, make them feel included. And as the percentage overall grows, and as we are trying to for the event marketers and field marketers in the room, as you're trying to build the next generation of attendees that want to keep coming back to your event. There are larger and larger proportions of people as they get younger that don't drink at all and or have never drank. That's really important, not just from a inclusion standpoint, but a budget standpoint, right? Like if you don't have to pay $120 a head for a bar package, but instead you're billing consumption, that's a very different budget you get to work with. And you can use that data by running consumption to understand how you should be ordering for things the following year. Okay, so we've thrown a bunch of terms around up here. We're going to have the discussion around vernacular and semantics. I bet you were not expecting that today.
I love a good vernacular combo.
Yeah, okay.
Got so many arguments on social media about this already. Stuff. I can't wait.
I came out here and ranted about the difference between a non-alcoholic beverage and a mocktail. When I said mocktail backstage, Carl, I just felt him clench out. I swear to God, you say that word.
I hate the word mocktail so much.
So, let's throw them all out. There's mocktail, there's zero proof, there's spiritless, spirit-free, which sounds like happy-free, non-alcoholic.
On a bar menu the other day, it says it was titled On the Wagon. The menu description for all the non-alcoholic.
Okay, anybody else? We're gonna save the last one for you. Anybody have any other different ones they've heard?
For vernacular, we were even talking about people, I call myself sober, but I'm not in recovery. I just don't drink. I think there's people say they're dry, or what was yours? Straight edge. I think there's all straight edges from poison free and the hardcore scene. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
My husband's hurtful.
She has a Sharpie of an X on her hand. That's how you know.
I'm not trying to derail the drink conversation, but to some extent, you're getting in the weeds. I think people get in the weeds arguing about this, and I love that you don't like mocktail, but I think people don't want to feel like they're drinking a kiddie drink. Is like that.
Okay, and the final term, which you named a bar after.
So I learned that the other term is soft cocktail, and there's a really high end restaurant in New York City that. Their whole stance is we don't start as a mocktail. It starts as a soft cocktail. We're not making fun of anything. It's intentional, it's thoughtful, it's premium. The garnish, the glass, how it's put together, the flavors, the palate. This is not something that they're just throwing together at the bat. And I think it's important, there's a way to do these beverages, but in a way that still mirrors that experience that you were having before. And the bartender at 11 Madison Park, which is who I'm talking about, he's my head bartender at Soft Bar. I sat at the bar the first time I met with him, and he goes, Carl, just because you're not drinking alcohol doesn't mean you deserve a lesser experience. And I literally was like, hold on, I want to make sure we got that up. Just say that one more time. Just because you're not drinking alcohol doesn't mean you deserve a lesser experience. So I would write that down. Think about all people that you're going to host events or put things together for. And that same level of elevated premium offering, I felt like I was a part of it. And having something in my hand, to everybody's point, it's a big component. And when you elevate that, I felt like I was back in this kind of amazing high-end cocktail bar. And I realized that obviously I'm not trained from it, but it was such an amazing experience. And I think the experience of it, you can still have a really good time and elevate a drink. You forget that you weren't drinking.
Well, and if it's an elevated product, even someone who's drinking will want to maybe have that too. And I think it's creating that permission structure for other people. I have people try mine all the time, and they're like, "Oh shit, that's really good." Yeah.
One thing was, I'm sure people have complained that it's you see a mocktail on the menu and it's oh, that's expensive. And why would I spend all that money on that sugary drink? You could make a better case to charge $14 for a soft cocktail, premium, elevated. People will pay for that, not a sugary thing you throw in the back that's $14.
Well, I was actually having this conversation with a hotel or airport bar manager a couple weeks ago, and he's like, I am not going to replace my Kettle One for a bottle of Loverboy or whatever because I'm making $80,000 a year on it. And I said, but I'm going to pay the same amount that you're serving a regular cocktail for. He's like, no, you won't. I said, I do it every day. Well, I don't. I do it as much as I can.
It's you fly every...
Well, it's now there's one restaurant in my town that has probably 7 different drinks on their cocktail menu, and and on their non-alcoholic version of it. They converted that.
Just remove the alcohol, right?
They do.
It's all the same, sugary.
Some of them, well, no, they're not super sugary, and they're using others, like they're using the non-alcoholic spirits in there. But then I go down the street, and they're like, do you want your Fresca? I'm like, no, right? Or your cran apple berry drink. Yeah, well, it's a cranberry. Yeah, cranberry. But we also have to make it, the decision about it. It is a huge market, and I know you probably know the number, how many $1 million it's projected to be.
Billions.
Billions. Thank you.
Do you have an actual number?
I have it on the slide.
The non-alc market, I mean, I think it's going to rise to like $3 billion in the next like couple of years. And another stat, which is kind of crazy, is Guinness, the Irish beer brand. Their Guinness Zero, the zero Guinness version, is on pace to outsell the regular alcoholic Guinness by 2027.
Wow.
And there's a big shift in Ireland too. I mean, think about Irish is typically known for big drinkers, but they've been shifting in that because of obviously what's going on, just what people understand like body.
As long as you're holding a Guinness, and it'll be ostracized.
And guess what? The Guinness Zero, I'm at Dublin, it tastes phenomenal. And out of the tap, that experience is still there. It's awesome. So there's a lot.
I think they're on the mark too, because even probably 5 or 6 years ago, they also went vegan because they also saw that trend there too. So the fact that Guinness is doing this as well really kind of epitomizes it.
I was just going to add, I think what's going to get really interesting for this industry is when all these big alcohol brands realize how important having non-alc is to maintain their alcohol business. A lot of brands will still invest in the non-alc just because it's the awareness. You know, Bun Zero looks to me like Budweiser. You know, Heineken looks like Heineken Zero to the consumer. So these big alcohol players, like Kettle Ones of the world, I'm sure in the next few years, you're going to start seeing a Kettle Zero vodka.
Well, in June, my friend Kate in Minneapolis is Zero Proof Collective. And she's talking to winemakers who are actually they're actually in California making the Zero Proof wine because they see the market and where they're going, and they want to make sure that they're on the show.
And it is a wildly expensive process to make zero.
You know who's taking a beating in alcohol sales? Wine.
Yeah.
So they're panicking and trying to figure out how to capture that market.
I was fortunate enough to go on a FAM in Sonoma. And the last day they took us to the Taste of Sonoma, which is, there is 100 wineries there. And I said, I would love to talk to a winemaker that's here about what the challenges are around non-alcoholic wine, because non-alcoholic beer is pretty good. It tastes like regular beer. Non-alcoholic wine is mostly trash.
I had a rosé one recently, and it'd been like, I don't know, over 6 years since I've had wine, and I was like, was wine bad?
Yeah, but it's because of the alkalization process. Yep. Okay. All right. I kind of made that up.
No, you got it.
I feel glad I got it right. I think I'm learning things by osmosis at this point. It's because the alcohol content is so much higher, it takes a lot more work. And when they can get $200 out of a bottle of wine, let alone they have to wait a year for their product to figure out if they're going to be able to have a good wine or not. So they're like, it's just, the shift isn't happening yet. And what's crazy is that was like 6 months ago. So the fact that it's already changed is amazing.
Yeah, I get a lot of the industry reports on the alcohol side, and I'd hope so. I'm not trying to beat on the alcohol industry. It's just the consumers are deciding, and alcohol is trying to figure out how to shift. We're all making these choices every day, but starting to scream a little bit louder for more options. You know, I'm still like, I get on an airplane today on Delta. If I want anything other than the Pepsi or Coca-Cola products, like, it's just water.
They're Coke.
So, like, I mean, I'm hoping airlines start
Atlanta. And definitely Coke. Okay, Madeline, you were, I didn't get any of your thoughts on, are there terms that you dislike around non-alcoholic, mocktail, etc.? No.
I just like seeing any of it on the veneer.
Yeah, I think what we can all agree on, and every non-drinker in here, is that if you don't want to have a drink, you want something different that makes you feel like you're having a drink, that feels like you're part of the event, and that isn't containing more grams of sugar than a frickin' soda.
And a giant, literally, you might as well just have a giant pixie stick, like the one Kinskier now.
Yeah. Just because I'm not drinking alcohol doesn't mean I want to replace it with sugar and carbs.
Yeah.
Like that's saying. Speaking of which, yeah, these are Teddy's calories. Okay. So the Vapor Boys that you guys are having, both alcohol and the non-alcohol are both, there's 0 sugar. So I think each is maybe 1 gram of sugar, but very low calorie. Again, the goal with our brand, what we were doing is we wanted to remove that sugar so you can still drink it without guilt, without, any regrets, as we have to say.
Perfect. Okay, so I think we've done our job converting everybody to the cult of inclusion of sobriety. I grew up as Jones Witness, so cults are near and dear to my heart.
Do a piano lot then.
I'm like, yeah, we're all going to convert you right now, so.
But what I want to talk about, because I spent a lot of time in operations and I've been in the weeds, and there was an email I got, and some of you may have gotten this email, so please don't say their name. I got an email, so like, oh, come to our happy hour at our booth. And I said, great, are there going to be mocktails there? And they said, we'll have non-alcoholic options. And I said, yeah, but are they club soda and juice? And they said, yeah, well, due to the catering department at Mandalay Bay, bop, 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 bop. I was like, oh, so you phoned it. So we talked about this specifically because, Carl, you and I weren't friends yet, so we are now. I'll text you later.
Yeah, I'll link me on. I hope we're friends.
We talked about how to overcome that, because let's say you're all now in the cult of inclusion, right? And you're like, this is great. I want to do this, but I go to a venue and they're non-alcoholic, 0 proof, soft cocktail, mocktail, whatever you want to call it. Options are just terrible. And they're like, that's all we got. Take it or leave it. We have 3 old Juuls that have been sitting in a cooler for 6 months, and that's it. Oh, my butt story, I do want to share this because it was at an industry event. I went to an industry event, went to the welcome happy hour. I was like, oh, do you have any non-alcoholic beer? Because that's usually pretty safe at events. They almost always have it. And they're like, yeah, we have 2. And I'm like, great, what are they? And he goes, no, we have 2 cans of non-alcoholic beer. I was like, oh, it's the same, but there's 2. Okay, so Tracy, we're going to start with you. How do we get past this nonsense of take it or leave it, this is all we offer?
Well, first of all, we have to ask the questions when we're doing our RFP and making sure that we have that. But I mean,
They're call members now. It's too late.
Okay, fine. So, all right, we're asking the question. We already have it on there. I mean, this summer I went to an event, or I produced an event, managed the food and beverage, and I went to the bar. What do you have? Nothing. And I talked to the CSM, and I said, what do you have? And she's like, well, we don't have that because nobody requests it when we have it on the bar or at our bars. I'm like, it's because you don't have it on the damn bars to know that it's available for me to drink. And what I did is I talked to the food and beverage director, and I said, can I just get this? And he said, yeah. So I did one of the delivery services, and I said, go to this liquor store and pick it up. And he brought it to me, and I got some I think it was Ritual or a different brand, Spirit Free. Is that right? Yeah.
What?
And brought it to the bar, and they served it the first night for me, and made me and a couple of my colleagues some drinks. And then the bar manager decided to make her own cocktails on mocktails or non-alcoholic drinks on her own. And they were selling it for $16, but we sold probably 20 per night, which I'm good with that, right? But the thing is with the drinks is that they're not yet distributed through the food and beverage companies. So you have to get them through the liquor stores or through the Amazon. You can buy Loverboy on Amazon. Yes. And I'm okay.
Question for you though, like in a future event use case, would you, if you're including that in the RFP, would that be a part of your F&B negotiation and you're providing it yourself? How would you do that?
I would say this is what I need on my bar, and I want it to be provided. And if you don't provide it, then yes, I'm going to bring you.
So something Tracy gave me, you gave me some verbiage about basically in your RFP, you say, if your food and beverage menus don't meet our guests' requirements, the client reserves the right to supplement with their own items.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Oh, you clap for that. I'm good with that. Thank you. Also initiates a conversation immediately because they're like, what the? are you kidding me? Like, you're going to bring in your own food? Yeah, if your food is trash, we're going to do that. And they're like, okay. And that initiates the conversation and the dialogue to fix it.
So you would also include like an ask to do a drink tasting as part of your psych process.
An alcohol-free drink tasting, because they're going to show up with champagne and everything else at the site inspection.
Yeah, and that probably is that. And I did meet somebody. I'm at the JW Austin next April, and I was on my site visit last week or whenever it was, and he's like, oh no, they're actually in partnership with Ritual, and they are doing a whole program with Ritual to create the different...
What's Ritual?
It's a brand of...
Ritual is a non-alcoholic spirit product that's actually backed by Diageo, which owns Casamigos and other large alcohol brands. Okay.
So we've got a tequila and the gin and things like that. And so they're putting all the bartenders through that training.
And the reason I said Diageo, they have a lot of money, which is good because they'll invest in Rituals, how programming, education, all the that stuff.
But they came to me and said, okay, and it helped somehow. Is Tyler Davidson here somewhere? He read that article that I wrote about food and beverage, and the general manager's like, hey, I read that article. And they came to me with their list of what we're doing based on what I had written about. So I'm excited that they have that in going forward, but we have to ask those questions up front.
Awesome. Has anyone ever skirted the rules and just bought stuff and sent it to the venue? So let's say you had this tonight and you loved it.
You could say it sucks. I know it doesn't.
And you want it at your event. Is there could you just order it and ship it? Are there laws against ordering the non-alcoholic version?
What is the venue like from that? It would be my question. I think, I'm an ask for forgiveness, not permission person of that too. But, if your goal is not just for your program, but for the next program that comes into the hotel, to try to push some sort of domino forward, have the difficult conversation with the venue. And like you would about, if sustainability, that's become an important topic for your company.
Well, and my friend Thomas said to me a couple of weeks ago when I was asking him about this, because I reached out to a variety of different catering managers, and he's like, that's just bullshit. Just bring it in and serve it. And he's doing that at his venues, or he's not there anymore, but he's just bringing it in and making it. And anybody that's telling you that they can't do it is full of shit.
Yeah, they just don't want to do the work.
They don't want to do the work.
I brought in, obviously we have this today, but pretty much anywhere I go, I bring a 6-pack of Loverboy non-alc just to be safe, because sometimes you just have to do what Alyssa said and ask for forgiveness. I think over time people will learn that they're not supporting these types of initiatives. They're going to lose out on that business. People are going to go to other places to host your events.
Hotels are on sites now, without being asked, giving their sustainability efforts and talking about wellness initiatives they have. So I think this might be a mirror for them to make that a part of that. They're proactively saying, you want to have any beverage programming, you don't have it on site yet, but you could bring in yourself if there's a product that you like.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was speaking with our current CEO of AWS, Matt Garvin, recently about budget, and we have a program. We send a lot of women to these big industry conferences. We were talking about how many tickets allocations we're going to get this year, and a big part of the conversation, he was like, hey, it's so hard for us to tell what these employees are getting out of these conferences. It's really hard to tell the ROI, the impact, the value of paying thousands of dollars for the ticket, the pass, getting them there. And so we know also that people who are hungover and drunk aren't working as hard. They aren't showing up for the 8 a.m. session. They aren't engaged and energized. So that's the conversation you've been having as well.
Thank you for tuning in for the entire year. I really appreciate it. I hope you've learned something from the 99 guests that have been on here. And please also let me know what you want to hear about in 2025. Send me a note at tracy@eatingatameeting.com and let me know who you want to hear from. Do you have a favorite author that you listen to? Do you have somebody that you admire in the events industry that does really well in managing food and beverage at events? Let me know. I would love to have them on as a guest. And then also, if you go to eatingatameeting.com/survey, take that and let me know what you think of the podcast as a whole. I appreciate you listening. I hope you've learned something from this episode, and I look forward to talking to you in the new year. Happy New Year.
Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.